I cannot, how do you say this word?
All right, thank you very much. I am sorry for the delay. It's such a pleasure. What a great crowd to come out here today for our couples talk about our exhibition, COMPETERE. Before I get started and introduce our guest, and I'm going to give a brief bio about these guests, but these guests are an amazing group of people that have just outstanding resumes, and I can't go over it enough. So it's going to be brief, but just know they are all very well established artists in their field. So, but before I do that, I need to give thanks to everybody that made this happen. I want to thank Josh. First, I want to thank our staff, and I want to thank Josh Newbin. Oh, there's seats up here, seats up here. Maybe Josh Newbin, since he works so hard, can go grab some chairs out of storage. Josh, can you grab chairs out of storage? I want to thank Josh for all his work. This doesn't happen without Josh. I need to thank Darius Today. Darius is our operations support specialist. Without him, we don't hang these shows. So we need Darius for those things. And I also have a group of interns that are amazing. Ainsley Steves is our gallery attendant. Without her, and the thing she does, she also does all the newsletters. She's editing these the catalogs and things like that. She's amazing. So I want to thank Ainsley. I want to thank Carly Hedges, who's a graphic design intern, and Andre Mendoza Gonzalez. When you look at these catalogs, these are designed by Columbus State students. They do an outstanding job, and it's a beautiful catalog, and we need to give them a little thanks. The other people I need to thank, it's our board of advisor, and Helen Hobbs, who's here, the chair of the board of advisors. We can't do this without Helen. Thank you, Helen. And then we have a few board advisor or board members that I want to thank who have financially sponsored this program. Joanne and Bobby Heck, who are here today. Thank you, Joanne. Could not do this, and Bobby, we could not do this without you. Anna and Jake Flournoy, and Becky and Sid Yarbrough. So they help us and guide us to make this happen. And we're going to talk about them in a minute, but this show is curated by Bo Bartlett and Betsy Eby. So they're here today. Thank you, Bo and Betsy, for curating this beautiful show. But this does not happen without really Juliana Wells making all the connections between the galleries, between the museum, between the artists. Juliana Wells connected every artist gallery to the center, and we couldn't do without her. And then finally, Anna Flournoy, actually, who is also a board member, helped edit this beautiful catalog. So again, I want to thank Anna. So let's give a hand to all those supporters. These shows don't happen without them. Thank you so much. So tonight we have 6 artists, and like I said, I'm going to give a brief kind of overview of a bio of these artists, and then I'm going to ask the first question, and the idea, hopefully, is I walk away and they have a discussion about the work, about COMPETERE, the idea of it, and they carry on, and we're able to witness this roundtable discussion, and then you can actually ask questions, Q&A at the end. So that's the plan. But I want to start here, right here to my left is Steve Mumford. Steve earned his BFA from the Boston Museum School and Tufts, and MFA from the School of Visual Arts. In his depictions of ongoing American wars, Mumford traveled to conflict-ridden areas such as Iraq and Afghanistan. And you can see this inspires his work. In his painting, he portrays moments of beauty, drama, fear, camaraderie. His work has been exhibited in galleries and institutions throughout the United States and Europe. Mumford currently teaches at the New York Academy of Art and lives and works in New York. So Steve is right here to my left. And his partner, Inka Essenhigh, I'm sorry, I didn't say her whole name. Inka earned her BFA from Columbus College of Art and Design in Ohio. Actually, I'm an alum from Columbus College of Art. I wish I had some cougar name to say go, but I guess we could say go Buckeyes. And her MFA is from the School of Visual Arts. Inka's paintings create lucid scenes in which the environment and figures coalesce. They are infused with playful, surreal sensibility, with pristine, jewel-like, colorful, high-gloss enamel surfaces. Her paintings often remind the viewer of our fragile coexistence with the natural world. Her work has been exhibited nationally and internationally, places like the Museum of Modern Art, the Royal Academy. Inka currently lives and works in New York as well. And then we have Betsy Eby. Some of us know Betsy, friends of Betsy. Betsy earned her BA in art history from the University of Oregon. Eby's paintings are influenced by Asian-inspired Northwest mystics and embody the diffused atmospheric fields and restrained palettes of the Pacific Northwest. Eby is a classically trained pianist. Her nature-based abstractions can be read as fusion of sound, color, and contemplation. Eby's work is held in many public and private collections, including the U.S. Embassy in Dubai, the Tacoma Art Museum in Washington, the Georgia Museum of Art up in Athens. And as many of you know, Betsy lives here and works here, and summers on Wheaton Island when it gets too hot. So to Betsy's left, we have Bo. Some of you know Bo. The center, if you didn't know, is named after Bo. Bo studied at the University of Pennsylvania and the Philadelphia, I did not know this, Bo, the Philadelphia the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. I did not know that until I read your bio the other day. He received a CFA from the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts and a certificate of filmmaking from NYU. Bartlett's work builds on the American realist tradition of Homer, Hopper, Wyeth, and Rockwell. His large figurative compositions, and if you missed them, there were a few when you walked in. Those large figurative compositions upend expectations with their terse psychological dramas. Bartlett has received several awards for his paintings, including the 1858 Prize of Southern Art, the Southern Arts Fellowship, the Pew Fellowship in the Arts. His work has been exhibited both nationally and internationally, and he is in numerous public and private collections. Bo lives here in New York, or in New York. It felt like New York for a second, just for a second. He lives here in Columbus, Georgia, and he summers in Wheaton Island and works there as well. And to his left, I was going to keep it in order, but I guess I can't. We have Kate Javens. Kate, who made this beautiful painting. I should have pointed out the work, but maybe you all will. The beautiful painting of the dog here in the exhibition. She attended Penn State University and the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. Her animal paintings contain metaphoric representations of American historical figures commemorated for their altruism and social activism. Kate is a Pennsylvania Council on the Arts Painting Fellow, a Pew Fellow, and 3-time McDowell Fellow. She has exhibited across the nation, and her work is held in notable collections across the country. Kate lives and works in Harlem, New York, and her partner over here to her left, last but not least, we have Wade Schuman, who studied in the foundation program at the Rhode Island School of Art and Design and received his CFA from the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. Influenced by the love of zoology, although I don't see it as much in this work, maybe that we could have that discussion. His unsettling psychological paintings often contain meticulous details of animals and capture the dual nature of life and death. Wade is a recipient of numerous significant scholarships and prizes, and he currently is the director of painting of the New York Academy of Art and lives and works in Harlem, New York. So please, let's give a hand to our distinguished guests. We are so pleased to have you. And I'm going to go to my list of questions. And I told them, I said, so this is how this is going to go down. I'm going to talk for 10 minutes. I usually end up talking more, sorry. I'm going to ask one question, then I hope to just walk away, and then you have a conversation. But I do have a list of questions if we get those awkward pauses along the way. So, but if you didn't know by now, this exhibition is about artist couples. Artist couples that each have their own internationally recognized art careers. Many are from New York or represented by blue chip galleries in New York, and often they're exhibiting both internationally and nationally. This exhibition explores how couples influence and impact and even compete a little bit, but ultimately better each other, better their art making practice. So my first question is for the entire group, and maybe we'll let, I don't know, we'll let you all decide who answers this question. So the Latin word competere means to strive together. How do you, as artists, couples, help each other strive together? And does competere ever even turn into competition? So I don't know if that's a good opening discussion question, and after that we'll move on. So who's first?
Take it, Wade.
I'll take it. So, okay, yes, this is on. Well, how do we help each other? It's nice when we have a similar temperament, which we do, but then we both come to the relationship and to the world with different strengths, and so it does. We help each other with our different strengths. I think Bo is very playful and childlike and free, and then I'm by proxy, or just by default, I think I've become the more structural of the two of us, which I was never structural before we got together, but I had to become a little bit more structural. I think that we find a balance. And as in terms of does it ever turn into competition? Yeah, I think so. Sure. You know, we're in the world, you know, trying to be the best painters we can be. And when we got together, we joked that, you know, we want to be the best painters in America in our genre. So because we paint so differently, it does kind of keep the competition at bay, really, because we're not competing in the same circles so much.
Yeah, exactly. I think that because we don't paint similarly, we paint differently, then we're both able to go into each other's studios, walk in and say, you know, this is what you need to change, without the other person taking it personally. You know, because we can see it in a more whole than just like if we were painting exactly the same genre, the same style, I think would be more quickly to get defensive. But because we paint very differently, when Betsy comes in and says something, I take it to heart and I think, oh, okay, I believe that, and vice versa. I don't let her into my studio as much as she lets me into hers. I go into hers almost every day. I lock mine. Nobody comes in because I'm a little more temperamental, right? Because I take it more personally if something's not working. Betsy.
Well, typically we have to invite each other into our studios. So, but no, I mean, like this season, we haven't been in each other's studios very much. But lately, because I'm finished with my body of work, you haven't. But I need to invite him to come and do some crits, and he needs to invite me. We don't just offer it up. We wait. Yeah.
Inka, you were going to talk?
Oh, well, I was just going to, is this okay? Should I take this off? Okay. Whatever people want. I wanted to say that we also have this, my studio and Steve's studio are right next door to each other, up on the 5th floor of a building up in New York City. And when you walk into the building and when you walk into our studio space, mine is open and Steve's door is closed. So, and we also, you walk into my studio in and out all the time, and I am only allowed to like knock and ask if I can come in.
So this comes down to temperaments, and Betsy was saying she and Bo have very similar temperaments. My wife and I have opposite temperaments. When Inka is working on something, she'll make a slight variation in the shape of a nose, and immediately she wants feedback. And she wants to know if this is great. So I'll go in and say, you know what, I think you really messed up that nose. It looks awful. And she'll then go into this sulk. I mean, she'll be actually viscerally angry at me. So then I have to kind of pretend not to look at the painting so as not to draw any attention to it whatsoever. So we go through a lot of games like that. But I was just thinking about the competition thing. And I remember early on when Inka and I got together, New York has got a lot of temptations. And we had about a, I don't know, 10-minute walk to our studio through the East Village. And there was this great Ukrainian dive bar. And in an afternoon, I used to be so tempted to go in and get a beer, which sometimes I would do. But while having that beer and a cigarette, this is back when you could smoke in bars, she was working on her damn painting. I had to, so ultimately my habits became better because I didn't want to be neglecting that time in the studio, knowing that Inka was working on her work in the studio. So I think that there's a healthy competition that happens when two people that are both really interested in their craft and trying to do the best they can they're both trying to get to their A game, so to speak. And you can't do that if you allow yourself to get distracted. It's part of the reason why a lot of artists don't have kids. You know, kids are phenomenal. Our species would not continue without them. Artists have a certain special dispensation.
We do have one.
We slipped. I know. Don't regret it. Anyway, I'm blathering. I've kind of lost track of where I was going with all this. But I think that there is an aspect of healthy competition where you're both pushing each other to do the best work that you can.
So, Kate and Wade, do you ever feel like you have to hold back amongst each other during a critique or when you're looking at each other's work, or do you feel that you have to really open enough that you can be honest?
I have to be honest. She's my favorite living painter. So not to be terribly corny, but it's really true. I really, really like her work. And for me, over the years, like I feel with her work, she gets to the essence of a kind of feeling. There's no bullshit. Am I allowed to say bullshit?
You can say that.
It's very, very sincere, and she has a kind of like ability to hone in on just an emotive presence in her work. And I, as an illusionistic painter, you can get hung up on technical things and uptight about all sorts of aspects of representation. And so for me, she's really a beacon because she just gets to the point, and also, as a teacher, I use her as an example all the time because everybody's uptight about color because we all secretly feel like we're not as good at color as we should be, right? Bo probably doesn't feel that way. He's really good at color, but, and I just say, look, my wife doesn't use color and she makes great paintings. Like there's no moral obligation to be chromatic when you're painting. So I've learned a lot from her just working side by side. I think the other thing I'll say that it may be different than all of us, maybe Inka and Steve. I met her when I was 20. So basically 42 years ago. And so basically I haven't been an adult artist without her there. So it's kind of hard to even separate that path separately from our relationship, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, can I go? I thought that when we first got together, that it would be complicated to have two artists living together because I had been married before, and I basically was able to just go off and do my thing all the time and not have that back and forth. But when we got together, my assumption would be that like we'd be balancing these delicate temperaments all the time. But I remember when Betsy first came to the island in Maine, at the end of every summer, I would take my work off and put it in this big marina hangar in Rockland. And Andrew Wyeth would come over and I would give him a show of the paintings I'd done that summer. And when Betsy first came to the island, she brought her paintings as well. And so we gave him, Andy and Helga, a show of both of our paintings. And Andy went over separate from everyone else and leaned over my shoulder and he looked at, after looking at Betsy's paintings, he leaned over to me and he said, "She's going to be good for you." And I think that it was just about the freedom and the liberation and the letting go. I assume that's what he meant.
I think I was going to not say anything, but can you tell us? I mean, we look at these works and yours and Betsy's. For me, it took when you said you were doing this show and you said you're going to see how these paintings all relate, right? That how these couples are influencing each other, Mike. And I thought, yeah, I can see Kate. I can see. You know, I'm looking at the body of work, and then I said, but there's no way I'm going to see in yours. And then I saw these works together, and so. Can you go in a little more detail, Bo? How, or maybe Betsy, how have you been good to each other, and how do you think these works relate since we're sitting here in front of them?
Well, I think this will surprise everybody, but we didn't, we chose these independently. I didn't know what he was choosing. He didn't know what I was choosing. And we didn't realize the similarity of the composition or palette until we were laying out the catalog. So it was a surprise to us as well.
Yeah, we actually we were lucky in some cases because we weren't able to choose the paintings. Like, for example, I think the Neo Rao was the only painting he had available that we could choose. And so sometimes we were able to have 2 or 3 choices from artists and choose ones that worked together, but other times we weren't able to do that. So we were able to choose the Rosa Loy, but and it did match perfectly, but sometimes it was just coincidence. And we were able to match up other people's paintings, but we didn't even match up our own. We just each had, that was the only thing I had available, and it was the only thing you had available.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that was the only thing I had in my studio.
So, but I'll go back quickly because I mean, in a way, it's the same painting. It's like just 2 different interpretations of the same thing. I mean, 2 different ways of seeing the world, but the idea and the mood and the content is very similar, I think, compositionally and tonally and colors.
I mean, and I'm sure even Josh would agree with us, and a lot of people, and probably Juliana, we've all had this opportunity, those of us working on this exhibition, to really look at these works and realize how they all relate. But I will say, Inka and Steve, it's your 2 pieces that look really visually for me, and I'm wondering if you talk about that. Maybe do you see them similar or do you see them different? But to me, that like out of this show, they were the ones that looked the most visually divergent from one another, the ones that didn't seem to have this connection. I mean, like you look at the John Curran and Rachel Feinstein on the other side of the wall, you know what's going on there. You understand how they relate to each other. And, you know, and some are more abstract kind of relationships like this, but those paintings, to me, I couldn't quite make that jump. And I wonder if you see them that way, or if you look at them and go, I can see how Steve's influenced me. Like Inka's probably going, oh, because you even said something when we came in. How come you see them so different? And I'm wondering how.
Well, I was thinking that they seemed no more different than, say, stylistically than, you know, Bo and Betsy's painting. But I mean, yeah, you could say that these feel the same way, they just look different. And I would say that Steve and I are very different artists with very different temperaments, different goals for different strengths. And I almost feel that there is almost a, the way I would say is like, I get to be in my fantasy world more completely because Steve is in the real world so much more completely. I don't know if there's any truth to that. I mean, I'd probably like to think that I was just making the paintings that I meant to make. He's making the paintings that he's meant to make. But I do think of Steve and I as being very different people. Yeah.
Yeah, you got a mic right there, so we can get it on Zoom.
So, but your earlier work was much more abstract in some ways.
Yes.
And then over time, you moved towards more illusionistic or tactile description.
Yes.
Do you think that had anything to do with your husband or totally unrelated?
Well, it's hard to say because, you know, I was doing that before I, before I was abstract, I was also figurative.
So you've moved in and out of it over time.
I mean, yeah.
When I met Inka, she was working a little bit like early Philip Guston, like the WPA stuff. So it had an illustrational component to it. But I've always thought of Inka as being, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, sui generis, made entirely of herself. Inka is one of these people who, while doodling on the phone, will just kind of come up with a form which is interesting to look at. Some people just kind of have that. I don't. I'm more of an illustrator. I need to have subject matter that I'm looking at. I kind of copy more than I invent, is how I think of myself. And that's not, I'm not putting my work down. It's just sort of both. Every artist has their strengths and weaknesses. And mine come from composing from things that I see in front of me one way or another. And I think that Inka, whether she's working representationally or abstractly, is always thinking about form. She's just kind of a formalist, and then how that cycles through her vocabulary of the human figure. So that's like when I said we're very different in terms of our personalities. I think that that's reflected directly in the work.
Kate, did you want to say something there? I saw you.
Yeah, we, I think, began a lot nearer one another aesthetically and diverged more. I was painting more opaquely when I met you, and a little more, I don't know. Yeah, but it was kind of a little more paint.
It was a long time ago.
Or actually, yeah, actually you're right. In the very, 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 that's true.
I think that was,
But I think that
was a little of my influence on you.
oh, I think it was a great influence. And also I think that I think that you have become even more focused and more,
Kate, would
more
you put a little
detail
closer?
oriented. Yeah, you've become sort of even more detail oriented, and I have become maybe even more just reductive and more kind of urgent in my style of working.
I think Wade disagrees.
Speechless. I've never seen that.
I mean, I think.
Will you talk into the microphone, because we're trying to record this as well?
I think probably in some ways of the three couples here, we share more of a commonality, not so much here, but in general in terms of iconography and certain interests. Yeah, but I think, it's a little like these guys, like one person's strong suit is the other person's weak suit, and back and forth. So, I think that's complementary and also inspiring. Like, I think that puts gas in the tank in a way. The other thing is, I can say it's not always easy or pleasant, but I totally respect her views on my work, right? So that's that, because ultimately I totally trust her instincts as an artist completely. So that's actually really helpful. And I don't know what you guys think. I don't think it's possible to be an artistic couple, in fact, if you don't believe that, in a sense.
Completely.
I think that would be the deal breaker.
Yeah, you have to completely be able to respect the other person's opinion. I mean, like just take it to heart and know that you trust it. You trust the opinion.
Doesn't mean you always enjoy it.
No, usually you don't.
But
Or agree, right?
Or agree.
Mike, you just said or agree, which is important because, I generally won't let a painting leave the studio unless it has Inka's sort of imprimatur. And sometimes she'll say something about, let's say, a portrait, and I just can't, not only do I not agree, I can't see it. I guess that's the point. But I'll sit with it, and I'll even try to rework it, knowing that I can't quite see it, to see if I can start to see it as I work on it. And so I heartily agree with what Wade said. I think the marriage wouldn't work for me if I didn't feel like I actually needed your opinion regarding my work.
Right, same with me. I would never let a painting, if you said, that's not done, I would have to, call it back, and even if I didn't see it, and I cried, and I was like, I don't get it, and I get mad at Steve. Sometimes I have, yeah, that there is sort of I will actually stop, and like not let a work go out if they don't, if they think it's that bad.
Yeah, yeah, Bo, you said a while ago, paint for love or something like that. Didn't you say paint? Something about, yeah, well, yeah.
It's a quote. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. I think that with every painting, when I'm finished with it, I stand back and I think, okay, would Bo love it? And if you don't come in and say, I love it, and you say, I like it fine, ugh. That hurts. I like it fine. Yeah. Well, going back to inviting each other into each other's studios. So if I have to if I have to go into Bo's studio for something, just to talk to him about something or whatever, and I know that he doesn't want my eyes on the paintings because he's talked about it, and so I give him that space and I don't come into the studio, but I have to go in to do something. And I won't look at the easel. I won't look. I can just, it's amazing how one can, can hone your eye and not look at something. And he says, you didn't look at my painting. You don't like it. You don't like it.
I think that we all put each other through the ringer. And I think that,
yeah, but in fact, I'm trying to, be respectful of what he needs. So I think ultimately, because I do respect Bo and he's such a great painter, I do. It's similar, the stamp of approval before something goes out into the world. But there was a painting I was finishing the other day, or I was about midway through just last week, and he came in and I said, do you like it? Because instinctively I knew something wasn't working, and it just wasn't feeling like it had a sense of inevitability to it. It felt too struggled for me. And Bo came in and he said, yeah, I like it. And you said, you really liked it, actually. And I just, so I sat with that for a bit, and I scraped it all back and I reworked it. But sometimes it's a
So you're saying if Bo says he likes it, you scrape it off. That's a sign that you got to start over.
I have to ultimately really feel that the work needs to be on the planet. There are those pieces you're working on and does not deserve to take up material or space on this planet, and those paintings, and so you just gotta chuck them.
You did it all over again, and it was better. You redid the painting and it was better. The good thing about having different ways of working is, I spend a long time like looking and thinking and years planning and all the studies, and so by the time I'm working, I'm pretty sure that I have it. Whereas you're much more free form and free flowing, and so I can go into Betsy's studio and say, I don't think that little passage is working, and she'll go over there and just take it out, or make it better. And when she comes into mine and something's not working, it's just life crushing, because I thought I'd gotten it to the point before I ever even started painting that it all made sense and that it was working. So to take out a figure or something is that's why I go into a deep depression about it. But you're so free. Betsy plays the piano. She goes back and forth from playing the piano to painting, and it's just it just flows out of her like nature or something. It's a miracle to watch.
Well, Bo and Wade, you told me, and maybe you don't want people to know this, but I'm going to share it. You told me that the Flying Man once had no pants on, and it was Betsy that told you to put pants on the Flying Man.
That's a true story. Yeah, I wanted him to be nude. I wanted him to be nude, right? Full frontal nude right in front of you there. That was part of the idea. But Betsy, all the way through, kept saying, you might want to put some clothes on him.
Well, he was right there. It was just so distracting.
It was center. I have to say, it was front and center. So I wasn't going to do it. Actually, I tried to put some underpants on him and stuff, and it was stupid. That was pretty funny. But then not until I showed it to my gallerist in New York, And I said, I'm going to be sending this painting to you. And he said to me, he said, I have a hard time selling, like full frontal male nudes. And so Betsy said, put some pants on. And wasn't that the way it worked?
It was the end of the summer, and because the way we work when we basically migrate to our other studios for the summer, you have to wrap up your body of work. And so we were like, I think we were leaving in 3 days, and we were packing up our place, and you were really kind of unsettled about it. And I'm like, that's okay, Bo, we'll just bring it back and slide it in the racks, and that did not sit well with you. And so you thought, I gotta go fix it. I gotta go fix it. 3 days before going. And he was walking out the door, and I said, pants.
Voila. Wade, you were going to say something, I think. I'm sorry, I cut you
Oh,
off.
I was going to say, one thing I think that is interesting, that all of us live in different artistic ecosystems, and even, none of us show in the same gallery, as our spouse. Right. No. Yeah. I'm not, yeah, there's a lot of connections between all of us, but in your career, you have different relationships with different galleries. You have, Inka has had a very different, just artistic environmental career in the art world than Steve, for instance, and Kate has had a very different one than I have. And I think that's also sometimes where tension can arise, because you're in a different strategic moment with different things happening. And sometimes you feel completely like you're on your own in those situations. But I think that also gives space as well, because you're not, I think it would be harder. I don't know what you guys think if you were sharing a gallery, like the same gallery. It doesn't mean that you don't, at times do that, but I think that's a significant part of it.
I think that's where the COMPETERE can turn into competition, is in those moments where the partner is having just a real high in their career, and then that begs one to reflect on where they are with their career. And it's just, you have to reel that in and don't let that you have to kind of flip that competition back to COMPETERE, because you love this person and you want the best for them, and your feelings of inadequacies at the moment, you don't really want them to get in the way of your partner really celebrating the highs that they're celebrating.
So I'm going to ask one more question, then I think we should let the audience ask questions, or you all can have more of a conversation. It's been lovely just to watch you interact like this and the back and forth. So COMPETERE, there's these couples together, and you all, I'm probably putting you all on the spot, so I'm going to ask Bo and Betsy first, and then you can think about it. But is there a pairing in this exhibition that was unexpected when you walked around and looked at it, or surprising in some way? And did these pairings of works change the way you looked at the individual artists or the individual works in some way? So I'm going to ask Bo and Betsy that, because you've had time to dwell on this.
Well, it's a little harder for me to answer because we've been working on this for about 2 years or so. So we've gotten so close to it. I think the surprise was Frank Brown and Rachel Scott, because Frank Bowling and Rachel Scott, because Frank Bowling's work is typically, he's having a real heyday in his career right now, and I think he's probably 90-ish years old. He's been knighted, and he's had major exhibitions in London recently. So I was imagining getting, when we got the work, I was thrilled that I'm like all of these artists, just thrilled that people wanted to participate. But then we got an older piece of his that wasn't the piece that I wanted. It was more what I was looking for, were these large, beautiful color field pieces. And they just had a real kind of sense of vibration to them that I responded to. So I was kind of surprised that he had that piece. but then, you know, surprised at how much it pairs with his wife's tapestry.
Yeah, I love the way those two pieces work together. I mean, just the composition and everything. And there, I mean, all of them. But I think I was most surprised because I didn't know Rosa Loy's work prior to choosing, before we got that work, how wonderfully related the Nia Rao and the Rosa Loy were. I mean, even to the landscape having the same color world. It's almost like he painted her painting. That house became that tree. It's like that painting really is in the other painting, and how the ability for the artist to sort of like incorporate that into their own work. And I don't know if that was conscious on his part or if it's just was happening. And also the Matt V and the Lisa Yuskavich are also, I love the way those two pair. It's like, it's a portrait of Lisa looking out the window of a train, I think, but the field out the window feels like the field that she's painted. So I love it when you have those little worlds colliding like that.
Oh, and John and Rachel's work was so similar too. That surprised me. But you know, it's not surprising because when you're dealing with your emotional life every day, because that's what we're painting from, is our spirit and emotional realm, and so we take that to our paint, and so and then when we're both, when each of us is in that realm, it's kind of not a wonder when we have similar dreams. I mean, I'll have a dream, Bo will have a dream about the same thing. This happens to us a lot. So it's not surprising that our works maybe would start to morph.
Yeah, one more thing about John and Rachel's. I mean, I'd seen the show. We'd all seen the show, I guess, of John Curran's, of the sort of marble figures and niches, and I didn't realize how similar it was to the sculptures that Rachel was doing. I just didn't realize that he was sort of riffing off of what she was doing. So that was a real enlightening.
And I don't know if Inka or Steve or Kate and Wade want to add. I know you've just come into the exhibition, so maybe you haven't had time to sit with it. But
yeah, I don't. The problem with me is that I know some of the artists so well. You know, like I know these guys, I know these guys, I know these guys, I know these guys. You know, and Sebastian and Iska, and I know them, and I've known like all of their work. So it's hard for me to be surprised, and except for the people that I don't know so well, like these two over here. But then I wouldn't necessarily judge what they were doing just on two paintings.
Kate, did you want to add something? Or sorry.
I'll just say that the Matt V. Levenstein, I didn't know his work, and it seems to me very different from Yuskevich's work. So, you know, that in itself is kind of interesting. I'd love to know more about that guy's work.
Although I think the way he's painting kind of looks like her work, you know, her work. I think that painting is unusual for her, to be honest. Sort
of, but there's a photorealist thing going on there that reminds me more of like Peter Drake and that, you know, that tradition. Anyway, yeah. So who knows? Maybe it's a not typical painting.
Oh, I was just going to say that I noticed right off the bat when we were looking at it in reproduction, I looked at Bo and Betsy's work, and I really thought they must have made them together, like at the same time with one another. But then when I came into the gallery, they said that there was no conference even about it. So you know, that was something that surprised me.
Well, I think it's time to let the audience, let's give them a hand, and then let the audience ask a few questions. I know there's always somebody who's wanting to take the risk first. Who has a question for our artist?
My question is for Wade and Kate, and it's less of art and more of as a couple in your 20s starting out. Did you share space? How did you do expenses? Like, how did you, I'm thinking starving artist and starving artist couple. I mean, that's got to be a very difficult situation.
Do you want me to answer? There was a lot of drama. We were art students. So I suspect some of these people may be art students. You know, there's always a lot of high octane emotive drama going on. And I don't think we could ever share a studio space. I think that would be not work at all. And you know, like I'm in awe of these two, that their studios are right there next. I mean, when I was a long time ago, but there was an open space between them, right? And I know artists that they literally work in one space together. I think probably if that was the case, one or both of us wouldn't be here. We would be deceased. So you know, everybody's story is different, you know, and I come from a family of artists going back to the 19th century. So for me, there was never a decision I made. So that's who the person I was. And I think, you know, I can't imagine either of us in any other way. Do you know what I'm saying? And I'm sure I'm explaining it here. You talk.
Many people have asked us over the years, oh, it must be so difficult to be with an artist. Is that hard? Is that hard? And I always thought, oh my goodness, it's just really the best. It really is the best. I can't imagine having something else, because there's so much understanding there. And also, I remember going to a commencement, Robert Hughes at Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, and he stood up, and I don't think it was his quote. I think he was repeating it. And he said, if you want to understand envy, live among artists. And I wanted to stand up and go, oh my goodness. No, every generous act in my entire art career has come from other artists. And really being able to live with one, I mean, that's the way I feel about it.
Yeah, there's a kind of empathy, you know, because the other person can understand your struggles. So, you know, if you're not with an artist, then they can just be like, you know, you're just so narcissistic or egocentric or whatever. But if you're with another artist, they're like, I completely get it, you know. Yeah, it's normal. Yeah, you go do what you need to do, honey.
Yeah, and to that, just going, you know, the way we weave through the world together, it's just, I mean, I think about how lucky I am every day to share this life. I'm so glad you brought this up to celebrate this, because to live every day with Bo, I feel so fortunate, because we have so much fun, and our conversations go to the best places and the most kind of obtuse places. And yeah, it's amazing. I don't think it's a struggle at all.
Did you mean financially? You know,
That's a little bit of it.
right. I think that the poverty would have been there no matter who you were with, though, or if, you know, or you couldn't, you know.
Not if you're with a doctor.
Right. Yeah. Right. Not
Or
if you're with a doctor, but I mean,
stockbroker
but then the doctor might divorce you anyway. So like, like it, you know, you would have to always make it on your own anyhow. Right.
I think the two artists are not necessarily aspiring to, you know, putting down the mortgage for the house. You know, it's really about making time to make art. So, you know, you stumble on these jobs. Like we had this job at a place called Host Apparel, and we would make these display boards for the salespeople to take around. So you'd be cutting swatches and mounting them, you know, till like 3 a.m. Do that for 3 weeks straight, and then you'd have enough money to paint, you know, for 4 months. Paid really well by the piece. So, and we'd pass this job around to all our friends. So, you know, you have this community. It's not just you, of course, and your significant other. It's everybody you know. Likewise, you get a dealer to come over to your studio. You have an agreement with your studio mates. If you bring somebody over, see if they want to see your studio mates' work as well. And I got my first show by somebody who came to see somebody else's work. So that aspect of sharing is just really, really key to being a young artist. You know, and yeah, young starving, but also young inspired and hungry. And that's hungry in an ambitious sense.
Yeah, it's great when Betsy and I have very different clients, because the work is different and they're in different kinds of homes or whatever. And so it's really great when all of a sudden one of her clients, wants to buy something of mine, or vice versa, when one of my clients decides to, bring one of Betsy's into their collection. So that's always like the highest, COMPETERE, like, yes, we did it.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah.
I can add something. Also, I have a career as a musician, so that's a whole nother side of my life that I'm very lucky that Kate supports it. But she she doesn't hear it. She like rehearsals, and she's very I have my own life, and when I'm out on tour, she puts up with that. I think, I'm gone a lot touring, and she's put up with that for like 20 years. So one thing I see in musicians, because very often they're musician couples, that doesn't work out so well. Because in fact, usually just musical groups don't last very long, very short amount of time. So musical couples, I think very frequently things fall apart pretty rapidly. But the thing about being painters is you're still independent. You're still working in your studio, your own work, as opposed to the communal aspect of being a musician. So in that sense, you have both work together, but you still have privacy in the act, unless you're collaborating. And there are famous, artist couples who worked entirely together.
Christo and Jean-Claude.
Sorry?
Christo.
Christo, and also, what's his name? The one who was buried in the Cadillac installation, Keenholz. Ed and Nancy Keenholz. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, we've collaborated a few times on a few paintings. But I think one of the things is that we celebrate each other's side projects and things that we know aren't going to make any money whatsoever, because you have to keep beginner's mind, and we know that we have to keep beginner's mind. So, when Betsy's doing something that I know is not going to bring in money, she can play piano for hours and hours a day, or I can be going off doing art house radio or something, some side project. She knows it's not going to bring money in ever, but you want to support the other person's creative life. And that other thing feeds them. So the music feeds the art, and these other projects feed the art. So there's a lot of understanding the need to continue to grow and have beginner's mind in projects and things that we do.
I think we have time for one more question, if anybody knows. Who was first? Ladies first.
Hello? Can y'all hear me? Okay, it's a little bit of a mundane question, but when you are actively painting in your studio, do any of y'all listen to music or talk to someone on the phone, or have something playing in the background for background noise?
I always have music playing. And then if someone calls me, Betsy, or I'm speaking with somebody else, then I paint right through talking on the phone. I think Wade talks on the phone a lot when he paints. He used to in the day. Not so much anymore. Nope. When you were young, you did. I was always amazed. Yeah.
I listen to music, but I can't listen to music with lyrics because it's too much of the human experience, and I'm trying to make paintings that are outside the human experience.
Don't you sometimes, when you're listening to something and then you look at the painting later, you remember exactly what it was you were listening when you did that? Every time.
And that's why I try not to listen to the radio too much. I try not to listen to NPR or something. I mean, I do a little bit right on the hour, but if I'm listening to some story on the radio, that gets into the painting and it gets into the paint, and it's no, I don't necessarily want that. So I would rather choose some music or some stream or music or something.
I listen to a whole combination of stuff. So there's points in my painting where I need to be in absolute silence. And then once it's going, I can listen to a book, I can listen to music, or I listen to, podcasts.
And a studio mate who always painted with a TV on, little black and white TV. And I don't think she looked at it too much, but it was just kind of a comforting noise in the background.
teeny, teeny black and white. There was some comfort in it, just kind of somebody telling a story. It was really amazing.
Use the microphone, Ruth. Microphone, please.
You can do that now with your iPhone. I've watched football games when I've painted. I mean, you can like watch football games or sporting events while you paint. Nobody's going to know unless you tell.
How do you deepen your love? How do you deepen your love?
Sublime question.
Doesn't
do you
it just
deepen your
happen
love?
naturally over time?
I like to say that you can have disagreements, but that and you may not have control over your emotions all the time because you're involved in whatever you're going through, outside circumstances and a lot of other variables like that, or you're dealing with the painting that's in your studio that you've got to get back to. But the thing you do have control over is how loud or quietly you slam the door. You have control over that. And you have to always remember that.
Well, I think we should wrap it up with that one. That's a good ending. Thank you all. Thank you to the artists. Please, if you want to, you can have another drink. Please tip your bartender. Pay for your drinks. This is an open bar. But I really appreciate you all being here, and stick around and look at some of the paintings for a little while. Thank you, and have a good evening.